Hey, how you doing? We are doing geography now, South Sudan. Previously, I've done 2 videos about South Sudan. Of course, I attended the FIBA qualifiers in Uganda, Kampala. I was working there, and I did a video of meet the South Sudan women's basketball team, and I did meet the South Sudan men's basketball team. They just qualified for the FIBA World Cup. We're going to be supporting you. We got you. Represent us, do well. So now today I'm talking about geography now, South Sudan. There are neighbors from the north. Yeah, they are on the north of Uganda. South, we are south of Sudan, South Sudan. They are north of us. So there are immediate neighbors. Hey neighbors! Today I'm checking out South Sudan. It's the youngest country because it was all Sudan, one of the biggest countries in Africa, Sudan generally. But then they divided. There's Sudan, which is in the north, and then South Sudan. So yeah, let's jump straight into the video.
Well, this is it. Now that the Sudan episode has been done, we reach our last and final twin country. Born in 2011, this is the newest country on Earth. It all begins with some very tall people in a very large swamp.
It's time to learn geography now.
Hey everybody, get a Geography Now mug at geographynow.com. It's not selling out if it's your merch. Oh, and speaking of which, these shirts are made from unityshirtshop.com. Thank you, Ruba from the Sudan episode for making these. If you'd like one of these, support Ruba's business at unityshirtshop.com. Now, South Sudan is not your typical African country. Everything from the physical makeup of the land to the people are completely distinguishable. And speaking of people, as you know, one thing we
there are many in Uganda, so you can know
in the country episodes. So say hi to Geography peeps, Akan and Nyamal. How you guys doing?
Great.
What are some things you think absolutely everybody must know about South Sudan? Very quickly, what do you think?
Well, South Sudan is home of the most melanated and lengthy people on the planet.
The food, great, natural, amazing.
There's so much we got to cover in this episode, right?
Yes.
All right, well, let's do it.
Let's go.
So as the newest country on Earth, obviously boundaries and borders had to be established.
But even then, things still got a little tricky.
Let's explain the animation.
First of all, the country is landlocked within East Central Africa, surrounded by 6 other countries, and has 3 disputed areas and 1
Uganda.
condominium. The first dispute lies within the Kafia-Kingi salient, which technically belongs to them on paper according to the comprehensive peace agreement that they signed with Sudan. Sudanese forces are still mostly in control as it acts as a biosphere reserve for the Radom National Park. Fun fact, warlord Joseph Kony is speculated to be hiding here. Moving on, the border with Uganda also has some border dilemmas, especially around the town of Moyo. Historically, the borders were never really properly demarcated, so they just kind of left it up to the peoples in the area to figure it out. Finally, they have the Alemi Triangle. Long story short, this area at the tri-point of Ethiopia and Kenya is under de facto Kenyan control, but claimed by South Sudan, as it had to do with confusing borders that were drawn and redrawn during British imperial years. If South Sudan were to come into control of this area, it would give them the most narrowest passage, only a few meters wide, to Lake Turkana, but alas, Kenya has de facto control. Otherwise, they share the Abyei condominium with Sudan, which means both countries have joint control over it, as agreed upon after independence. Moving on, the country is divided into 10 states, 2 administrative areas, and of course, the special administrative area of Abyei. Aw, this state is called Unity, and this one's called Lakes. The 2 administrative areas are Pibor and Ruweng, which act as zones that have a slightly different status due to various compromises made with inhabiting ethnic groups. In any case, the capital and largest city is Juba, located in the southern part of the country. Here you can also find the largest and busiest airport, Juba International, which serves as the main hub for any foreign visits to the country. From there, the second largest city would be Bor, located about 100 miles or 160 kilometers north of Juba in the Jonglei state. However, the second busiest airport is actually located in the 5th largest city, Malakal, located in the north and eastern Nile state. With the exception of the inner city roads and 1 highway between Juba and Nimule on the border with Uganda, nearly all the rest of the roads of South Sudan are unpaved gravel roads. Finally, the country has only 1 railway that connects them to Sudan from the city of Wau in the northwest to the city of Babnusa in Sudan. The line was heavily destroyed during the Civil War, but rehabilitated with UN funds and reopened in 2010.
Keep in mind, the states are often bunched into 3 historical provinces that many people might refer to if you ask them. They are Barkazal, Victoria, and Greater Upper Nile.
Also, Juba isn't even that old. It actually started as a trading post made by Greek settlers in the 1920s.
And speaking of condominiums, South Sudan used to belong to the largest one ever made, the Anglo-Egyptian condominium. In fact, South Sudan was kind of triple colonized. It was like
Look, Egypt, technically run by an Albanian guy under the Ottoman Empire. You and I are both powerful people. Let's say we team up and we control pretty much the whole Nile.
Okay, so we're not part of the British anymore, but I'm still in charge of you.
Okay, I'm not part of Egypt anymore, but I'm still in charge of you. Okay, we had 2 civil wars after giving you autonomy. Clearly, we can't stick as one. Here's your independence.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Oh, and also you can't use our oil pipes.
What?
Yeah, that's an incredibly condensed version, but triple colonized. You get
Yeah, I get the
Now,
point.
the
I
thing
know
about South
pretty
Sudan
much
is
most
that
of
even
it.
though cities are growing, they still have one of the most rural, dispersed populations on earth.
So obviously, due to this interesting layout, getting around in South Sudan is quite different from most places. For example, they have like an app that's kind of like Uber. It's called Shilu Ana. What do you guys know about getting around in South Sudan?
Like, I visited a couple years ago. There's no like direct way or direct direction of how to get around. Every man for themselves. There's a lot.
Oh, also, Molly, you wanted to mention a cool place. What was it?
We can't forget Nasser. That is the city where my family is from, my parents. So shout out to Nasser.
What ethnic group is from there?
Nuer.
So if you want to learn about the Nuer people. Oh, and Akan, you said something about hotels in South Sudan. What was it about?
So when I went to South Sudan, I realized that a lot of people lived in hotels, and those are people that had the means, the money. Otherwise, people lived in like huts and places with no electricity.
So it's kind of like, if you got the money, you go for a hotel.
Exactly.
In addition, there's so many cool nature spots of South Sudan, and that just, I guess that brings us on to the next segment.
Physical geography. Physical.
Now here's the thing. Yes, South Sudan usually punctuates its reign on the poorest countries by nominal GDP lists.
And yes, statistically, the majority of the population, especially in rural areas, don't have regular access to certain utilities.
But the funny thing is, by all means, it's a nation with lots of potential to flourish, but it's just, the political atmosphere always kind of gets in the way. The politicians, everything.
Politics.
Yeah.
Always,
The
everywhere.
good news is the dust is now just starting to settle. And there's a lot of promising recovery work happening.
First, let's explain the physical layout.
Now, from the globe, you can tell that South Sudan's domain lies just below the Sahara in the beginning of the lush green belt of Africa. This means the majority of the country is lush, with tropical grasslands and savannas and forests. This is partially due to the Ironstone Plateau on the west side of the country, a slightly elevated region about 800 to 1,000 meters above sea level that gets copious amounts of rain that inevitably flush into the Barkazal region. The only places of noticeable arid landscape would be the far north Upper Nile salient area on the border with Sudan, and the far southeastern corner on the Alemi Triangle with Kenya and Ethiopia. All the lush greenery is fed by the longest and most important river of the nation, the White Nile. The thing is, the White Nile isn't even easily traceable due to the fact that it feeds through the largest freshwater wetland in the Nile Basin, the massive and famous Sud. At some point past the town of Malakal, the White Nile just kind of thins out and flattens into all the Ironstone Plateau runoff, creating an incredibly massive swamp with an impossibly complicated maze of disjointed tributaries that sometimes dead end, dry up, or cut off into oxbow lakes. This is where it gets its name from, the Sud being Arabic for barrier or obstruction. In ancient times, the Egyptians couldn't get past this maze, and neither could the Romans. Many sources will just claim that the Sud swamp is considered the largest inland body of water in itself, since it's too difficult to measure the constantly fluctuating levels of water in dry and wet seasons. However, I kind of wanted to be a little bit more thorough and see if there were any actual lakes of substantial volume, and I believe this one, near the 7-degree latitude, 30-degree longitude line, near the village of Genglil, is the largest of all the river lakes. All these waters, though, eventually meet up in the south, where the highest elevations are in the Imatong Mountains near Uganda. And it is also here where you can find the tallest peak of the nation, Mount Kinyeti, at about 3,200 meters high.
Yeah, water is almost overly abundant in South Sudan, and the people here are kind of flood experts. For example, in some places like Awil, the capital of Barkazal, the population fluctuates seasonally as people move back and forth between the plains during the dry season to tend to their crop fields, and then they move back to the city when the floods return.
Now here's something even more interesting. South Sudan is actually very rich in oil.
See, South Sudan actually ranks third in oil reserves in sub-Saharan Africa, most blocks located in the northern part of the country.
Here, the potential to produce 3.5 billion barrels annually exists. However, only about 10% of it is tapped.
Hey, you destroyed some of the oil fields in the Civil War like Block 5, and then you suspended us from using your oil pipes in 2012.
Yeah, but then I reopened them because clearly you need my port for global trade and my refineries because you don't have any.
Not for long. I'm building 2 refineries. Then hopefully I can ditch you for the LAPSET project.
Wait, what? Oh, you little.
Yeah, as of 2021, the Ministry of Petroleum started their first rounds of investment bidding for oil licensing. And currently they are trying to invest in connecting a pipeline to Lamu Port in Kenya.
But it will take some time and it has to work out perfectly.
Nonetheless, much of the economic progress was hindered in the decade following independence.
For now, South Sudan still currently has one of the most underdeveloped economies with the highest aid dependency on earth.
They even import much of their food from neighboring Uganda and Kenya, which is weird because the World Food Program estimates that about 90% of their country is arable, yet only about 5% is cultivated.
Regardless of the low GDP statistics, they don't seem to have many problems with food insecurity.
Due to the highly fertile lands, most people have access to their own subsistence crops, and they have one of the largest population of pastoralists.
Cattle.
In fact, there are more cattle in the country than people. Speaking of cattle, let's move on to the wildlife section with Gary Harlow to explain. Hey everybody, so yeah, Caleb aka Gary Harlow was gonna film this, but his wife is incredibly pregnant. She could be giving birth like right now as we speak. So I'm gonna fill in. 6 national parks, 11 nature reserves, all taking up about 15% of their entire land mass. Thanks to the low density of human population, they have the 2nd largest mammal migration on Earth. About 900 species of birds can be found here, including the
Shoebill.
shoebill bird, because its bill looks like a shoe. Look at him. But if you're lucky, you can see the national animal, the African fish eagle. South Sudan is a refuge for some incredibly rare species, such as Grevy's zebra, the largest of all the zebras, and the African wild dog. Of course, with lots of rivers and water bodies, you can find lots of fish, such as the bichir fish. It's a lungfish. It can partially breathe on land and crawl up with its pectoral fins. In fact, it's often said that fish in South Sudan live long and die old because people don't eat fish that much in South Sudan. They're more focused on livestock. You could potentially catch a huge tilapia, perch, or catfish like the size of you in their rivers or waters. So that's pretty much all I got here. Caleb, can't wait to see your kid. Have a good one.
Well, that's interesting to learn, though.
You don't fish a lot, though.
We
It's
don't
weird.
fish.
If you
We
want.
could. I wonder
Like
why.
the
That's
Shilluk
really
people
interesting.
focus on that kind of aspect.
You guys love your livestock, but you have so much fish. Go more fishing. Go fishing more.
Honestly, can't swim.
Take this away, Akon.
Akon.
Akon. You're not Akon.
Akon.
Well, regardless, South Sudan definitely has an amazing food scene that is very underrated.
To explain more, here's Langfala.
To be honest, we have a lot of cuisines, but let me just pick some of them. We have Asida and we have a Kisra that was inherited from the north. We have Manyakelo, we have a Kop, we have Walwal. And the good thing of Walwal, you use it with Tung. Coming to the Equatorias, there is a Gwede, there is Samagarubutu, there is Ocholamero, Dodo, Janga
Also, as you call Amaranthus,
and
Dodo.
also breweries is part of our life. We do
Kwete.
have a
We also have
Kwete,
Kwete.
we have Kenyimuru, we have Guntok. We love food. We offer food to you when you come to us. We eat when we are at the funeral. We eat when we are, if you have an event without food, nobody's going to speak good about it.
Of course,
Thank you,
everywhere.
Langfala. Fun fact, if you order a combo with a drink and fries, you'll get a combo. No, you have to literally.
Actually, slap you?
Yes.
Yeah, slap him.
Your mom's best dish that she can make. Go.
Cook. Ooh, easily cook.
Go.
The best that I would choose is Mula Kudra, and people come together and you all share.
Everything's kind of communal when you eat, right?
Right.
It's weird to eat alone.
Yes. If you're cooking, you have to cook for everybody in the house.
Yes.
In any case, like the food, the people of South Sudan come in so many different groups and styles. Let's talk about that now
Demographics.
All right, so Yamal, Akan, what do you think it means to be
Akon.
South Sudanese? What is a South Sudanese person?
Knowing a lot about yourself. And naturally, we're very spiritual people. So we believe in the power of your words. We believe in community. We believe in family.
And adding on to what Nyamal said, being South Sudanese means that you have an ambition to be something greater than the place that you come from.
Cheers for South Sudanese people. All right. Well, okay, so within South Sudan, there are tons of tribes and clans.
I know the
and
Dinkas,
ethnic
though, they're the
groups.
most
The vast
common
majority,
ones.
though, belong to one of the most distinct people groups on the planet, the
Nilotes,
Nilotes.
yeah.
We'll talk about them in a bit, but first, the graph.
First of all, the country has a
Oh,
population
11,
of
just
about
like
11 million people,
Greece.
with over 60 tribes or ethnic groups, and about half of the population is 18 or under. Within these various groups, the vast majority, at over 90%, some say up to 95%, are
In
of the
Uganda, it's the
Nilotic
Bantu.
branch, whereas the remaining population is mostly Niger-Congo groups, sometimes falling under the alternate Bantu title. Within these
Bantu, yeah.
groups, a few stick out as the larger,
I
more
think
predominant
Dinkas.
communities. The Dinka
Aye,
are
they
the
are the
largest
common,
at somewhere around
yes.
35%
I
of the
know Dinka.
population, next being the Nuer
Others
at
I'm
about
not sure, but
16%.
Dinka is
And from
the
there, it's
common
kind of
one I
debatable
hear here
on
in
which one
Uganda.
comes in third,
Dinkas
as
are
statistical
many.
data is usually difficult to get exact estimates, but each of the three tribes, the Shilluk, Bari, and the Niger-Congo Bantu group, the Azande, all have very similar populations and take up about 5% each. From there, the rest of the population is made up of the remaining 55 or so tribal and ethnic groups, usually ranging anywhere between a couple thousand to less than 100,000 each in population.
We use the South Sudanese pound as our currency, and we use the types C and D outlet. We also drive on the right side of the road.
The official language of the country is English. However, of course, most people use the mother tongue of their tribe or ethnic group first.
Keep in mind though, due to the influence of Sudan when they were under Sudan, some people, mostly in Juba, still speak a dialect of Arabic called Juba Arabic, which is kind of like a mix between Arabic, English, Turkish, and native words from various tribes.
There is no single type of South Sudanese person. However, as we explained, the vast majority are Nilotic peoples.
We've talked about these people before in previous episodes, but recap.
Nilotic peoples, or Nilotes in short, are some of the most distinguishable individuals not just in Africa, but the whole world.
For one, due to our genetics, many have very commonly noticeable features such as long, slender, ectomorphic physiques, long limbs, some of the darkest pigments of the skin, and height in the world.
Okay, I'm standing right next to you guys.
That's us.
This is the height range. So clearly Nimal is the tallest.
Supermodel.
Period.
Period. That's right. After Dutch males, Nilotic men are considered
Second
the tallest
tallest,
people
not
on
after
Earth,
Dutch.
and specifically the Dinka and Shilluk
Dinka.
peoples, averaging at about 181 to 182 centimeters respectively. Your men's are the tallest.
Our men.
The way you said that. Faith-wise, almost 2/3 of the country are Christian, with about 30% adhering to traditional African beliefs like animism, and the remaining population is mostly Muslim.
Now, considering how the majority of the country is Nilotic and non-Muslim, you might kind of pick up on the hints that played into the civil war when they were under Sudan's rule in the north.
Let's have geography Akech explain.
So basically what happened was that, Sudan and South Sudan, they're really two different lands. They're different every single way, in terms of land, in terms of religion, in terms of culture, in terms of the people in general. As you know, in Sudan, people are a mix of Africans and Arabs, and in South Sudan, people are mostly just Africans. And then when Egypt colonized us, and then when Great Britain colonized us, it seems like they forced two different lands together. And then not only that, is when they left, they also put most of the control of Sudan to people from the north, who in turn discriminated against people from the south. That is when they started rising up in the first war, and there was about 500,000 deaths as a result of the war. But the war that most people know about between the north and the south was the Second Sudanese Civil War. That war cost approximately 3 million lives, and that war has been led mostly by John Garang. He's a famous figure throughout all of Sudan.
I had John
During
Garang.
that war, atrocities were committed by both sides on a massive scale. And not only that, it wasn't only just the South fighting the North, but it was tribes within the South fighting each other at that time, while we were also fighting against Sudan. And I guess that's what also led to the bitterness between North and South Sudan. And that's what also led to the bitterness between all the tribes in South Sudan. I'd say one thing that every single family in South Sudan has in common is that they all have lost somebody in that war against the North. A lot of people lost their lives at that war.
Thank you, Akech.
Then in 2013, there was an internal war. In a nutshell, it went like,
Oh, you are totally gonna coup d'etat me. Oh, and yes, I usually wear a cowboy hat in public. George W. Bush got me into this trend.
Oh, that's crazy. I was totally not gonna coup d'etat you. Oh.
This is kind of stupid.
I'm so tired. 400,000 people killed and a third of my country displaced.
We're better than this.
We need to stop.
Peace deal?
Yeah.
Okay, peace
Let's
deal.
do it.
Yeah.
Speaking of margaritas.
And from there, a national unity government was established, giving representation to all political factions.
In any case, like many of our previous episodes, South Sudan is a country with extreme tribal and ethnic group diversity. Even within the Dinka group, there are like 25 subclans, and you probably know more about that because you're part Dinka.
Yep.
What type of Dinka are you?
So I'm Dinka, and I'm from the Ngok Luol Yak.
And you're also part Shilluk.
Partial.
So you're Nuer, but what part of Nuer are you?
well, I'm Noir, but I failed to mention that my dad's mom is Dinka. and choose Dinka Bur. So I'm Gajok, so I'm Nuer, and I'm from the Gajok tribe within the Nuer.
What is it like when you meet other Nuer people or you meet other Dinka or Shilluk people?
I mean, it's like we connect in ways that are, beyond such like a tight-knit community.
For me, like, I think it's awesome when I run across a person that speaks the same language as I speak, so that I keep that language, I remember that language always.
Yeah, especially like also me identifying as Nuer, but also having Dinka.
I'm Dinka and I'm mixed with Shilluk.
I think that's a blessing, though. You got two different worlds in you. I'm half Korean, half European. And we're all American. So, yeah. So, obviously, we don't have time to discuss all the groups and their traditions. That would take
I'm quiet,
way too
but
long.
I
But
am
to
paying
summarize in the
attention.
broadest terms, most South Sudanese people can be culturally divided into the three regions that we discussed earlier.
Barghazal come from Arabic
Baal
meaning
Gazelle.
the sea
I remember
of
in
gazelle.
history.
Home of the largest group, the Dinka, as well as other Nilotic groups.
This area is predominantly made of shrubland, which makes it perfect for cattle, which plays a huge part in the people's culture here.
Then you have the greater Upper Nile. This is the largest
That's where
wetland
the
area,
Nuer
seasonally
are.
flooded with marshes and river tributaries.
This is home to most of the North
Shilluk.
people, as well as some of the Dinka and other tribes like the Shilluk, Anuak, and Birta.
The Shilluk and Anuak are actually famous for having kingdoms that formed centuries ago.
Finally, you have the Equatoria, the southern part of the country. This is the agriculture zone where most of the produce comes from. It's also home to the most ethnically diverse region in the country. You get a lot of tribes here.
Here you find dozens of tribes and clans like the Bari, Mandari,
Kuku.
Tokusa, Puku, and the largest
Azande.
non-Nilotic tribe, the Azande.
All right, so what are some things about the South Sudanese culture and things that you've taken notes of from your understanding? How would you go about it? What would you say?
Because marriage is such a beautiful thing. It's huge in our culture. But another thing that I do want to talk about it is our ghost marriages, I guess. When a girl or a boy pass away young, a family member can get married and have children on behalf of the deceased.
And this happens commonly throughout many different tribes, right?
Different tribes. It's Nuer, Dinka, I believe the Shilluk tribe also, but there are different types of scarring that are done by needle. And in Nuer, the forehead scars that go over the forehead that are like lines, it's called gar. And there are dots, and that's bir. It's completely normal and it's respected in the culture.
And the cuts is to distinguish like what tribe you're from.
Everybody has a story in South Sudan.
Right.
Tukul huts, they're very popular. They're made of mud and they last about 20 years. You'll find them very often in South Sudan. Apparently, a lot of girls play boru boru. It's basically a dodgeball game where there's like 4 girls on every side of one girl in the middle, and they just whip a ball at her and she has to dodge them. And speaking of sports, let's go to Art with the sports part.
Hey guys, I'm on daddy duty.
Oh,
This is
yes,
awkward,
good.
but
I watched
let's
a
do
quick
it.
video and
Athletics in
was just
South
getting back.
Sudan. All right. One of the favorite pastimes at the tribe. I don't know if I can do this. He's distracting me.
Just play over here.
One of the most favorite pastimes people have in South Sudan is wrestling. It's mostly practiced though by the Dinka, Mundari, and Lakuta peoples. And often events are held every month. The objective is pretty simple. You just slam your opponent on the ground. Otherwise, South Sudan is known for a lot of other athletic accolades. In the 2016 Olympics, there were 5 South Sudanese athletes actually. They competed for the first time under the refugee Olympic team. Otherwise, it's well known that many of the South Sudanese diaspora in Australia have been drafted in the AFL, making a name for themselves. But if there's one sport that's really put South Sudan on the map, it would probably be basketball. If there's one player that everybody knows from South Sudan in the NBA, it would probably be Manute Bol, tied for the tallest player ever in the NBA. Manute also had the longest arm span in NBA history. These advantages made him one of the most imposing defensive players in the NBA. He set many block shot records, and the only player in the NBA to have more block shots than points scored. Later on, one of his many sons, Bolbo, actually followed in his footsteps and got recruited to the Miami Heat and then later to the Denver Nuggets. Wow, Mikhail, are you gonna carry on my legacy? Not Slovenia!
Thank you, Art.
So I would say like 10% of South Sudanese culture is on paper, and 90% is really taught through spoken language and storytelling.
We want to unite everybody from South Sudan together and make it even stronger. That's the only way.
Amen. You got to move forward together.
Exactly.
Well, there's so much to talk about the culture, so you know what? Let's just give Hannah a little bit of a rundown on the general culture of South Sudan. Hannah, take it away.
All right. So there are a ton of groups of people in South Sudan, so there's not really one cultural experience. But there are some universal principles that everyone seems to adhere to. For one, similar to many nations in the area, age is very important. It's a really big no-no to insult an elder, and if you do it, it's kind of like a curse. Often cattle are considered a bigger form of wealth than actual money or other commodities. Someone give me a cow. In fact, it's actually kind of rare that the South Sudanese would eat cattle. The meat is usually reserved for a big occasion or for somebody really important who's visiting. Like in the Rwanda episode, South Sudanese will actually trade cattle during a marriage. It's like a cattle
it's even in Uganda it happens.
tradition. And this is why bartering culture is really important, and not just for marriage dowries. You can do it for pretty much anything. You can trade things for crops, labor, clothing, whatever. This is because most of the country operates under customary law. This is why social structures like marriages are addressed in the home, community, and tribal councils. Everywhere on the streets and walls, especially in Juba, you will see acrylic murals with the overarching theme of peace. Many are done by the visual art association group Anadaban. You'll see hashtag Anadaban on many of these murals. And speaking of art, there is an amazing story about South Sudan's film industry, starting with the Woyi Film and TV industry, a group that was created out of a refugee camp, and now they make movies in South Sudan. So if you want to learn more about that, follow me on Filmography Now. It's my new YouTube channel. Hannah has a spin-off.
She talks about film.
Which brings us to Keith, who is actually back from Florida, moving to Los Angeles. Are we happy about it? Are we sad? Comment below. Let us know. Wow.
Keith.
Hola!
Yeah, he's the new tenant.
Just so you all know, this is a band from Sri Lanka. They're called Shihara. The singer of the band, she loves geography now, so she sent this shirt in. Woo! Drink root beer.
It really is root beer, not real beer.
Yes, root beer. And I'm back in LA. All right, South Sudan. Today, music is actually seeing a huge revival. During the years when they were under Sudan, especially in the 90s, much of the music tracks in the recordings were actually destroyed because Sudan actually wanted to promote their propaganda. During that time, though, there was an underground movement that sidestepped the government restrictions. South Sudanese artists would intentionally mix different languages and music styles to be able to covertly hide their meanings of their songs, and in 2005, these artists collaborated. This moment sparked a cultural milestone. From then, many notable artists have come out, like these people. Even this one's known about making a song about big butts. I got one of those. I look forward to seeing many great artists in the future. If you know any more, write in the comments below. Oh, before I go, if you guys remember the South Africa episode, I talked about a song.
Thank you very much for watching. I'm so sorry for this mess up. I just noticed during editing that the video got cut off. But anyway, thank you very much for watching up to now. To complete the video, you can go watch the original one. Bye.